Hey guys, welcome to episode 7. In this episode, I have a chat with Rachana Acharya and discuss how she put her rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune disease into remission using diet and lifestyle when nothing else was working, and it enabled her to be in charge of her health. Enjoy.
Hello, go for it. You can hear me? Yeah, I can hear you as well. Perfect.
We got there in the end. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm waiting for the British summer to start at some point.
Crazy,
It's
isn't it?
really cloudy still today, so fingers crossed this week. Hopefully it's supposed to be sunnier. So yeah. How are you?
I'm all right. I remember in July, and I don't watch the news, but for some reason I watched it during mid-July time, and they kept saying 2 weeks of African heat, 2 weeks of like scorching heat, and I kept saying to my wife, "Oh, it's gonna be really hot in the next 2 weeks." And literally 2 weeks went, and it was just raining in Birmingham. I don't know, was it the same for you as well, where you're from?
Yeah, it's been miserable. I'm in Hertfordshire, so just outside London, and it's been like I had to put my heating on last week. So
No way.
it's been one of those summers. So yeah.
And I can't remember the last time it's been like this. Since my first daughter was born, it's just been scorching heat every summer. But this summer, it's just been, I don't know what's going on. But we went to Bournemouth for a couple of days to have a nice break.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Sally and Martin. We hired out an Airbnb, and we basically lived in their house. And it was the best. It was the best place ever. Like the beach was only a 25-minute walk away, but it was
lovely.
A long 25-minute walk. Like to get there, you go past the park, and then it's the city centre, and then it's the beach. So the
beach in Bournemouth is amazing. Like it's so lovely and sandy, and there's some really amazing UK beaches actually.
There are.
Yeah, you just need the weather. You just need the sun to come out.
That's it. You know what? And when it's summer here, it's one of the best places to be. I actually love it when it's summer here, but it's just when it's not. It's like literally the miserable places to be. But I guess it's what you make of it, isn't it?
Exactly. Got to be positive mindset. So
that's it, 100%. And how was your move? You moved, right?
Yeah, so we've just moved into a flat downstairs for more space. We're like currently looking for a house, which we could do a whole podcast on, I'm sure. But it's very nice having a bit more space, and just like for my son to have a bigger room, bit of outdoor space as well. Yeah, it's made a big difference. So it's nice. But you never realize that moving, even if you're just moving downstairs and you're moving flats, it's still the same amount of work, isn't it? So it was tiring, but it was the right thing to do. So we're really happy where we are now. So
that's good.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, and I thank you for getting in touch with me, because I wouldn't have known you if you just got in touch, and we just haven't had a chat just like we are doing now.
And I was just going to say, thank you. Like I really enjoy your podcast. I'm a fan. So I'm really honored to be here and speaking a bit more about my story today. Thank you.
No problem. And your story is what really intrigued me. So if you just want to let the listeners know who you are and what is your journey, what happened to you, and why you are interested in health, and then we can go into the rest of it after.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Rachana Acharya, and I've always been interested in health. So like even when I was growing up, I'd always remember, like if I was in waiting rooms or reading magazines, I'd always turn to the health and well-being section first and read that. So I've always had an interest in it, but my kind of interest really intensified as a result of my own health conditions. So in 2015, after kind of a few months of like a few signs things weren't right, like I'd get like some swelling and pain in a certain joint for a few days, and then it would go away. And I effectively just ignored it, thinking it was probably stress. I was just working a bit too much. But after a few months of that, I woke up one day and I couldn't move one whole side of my body. And that's really when kind of I thought, okay, there's something really not right here. And I went to the hospital and did like a series of tests, and all my inflammatory markers came back like really elevated. And I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, it was a bit of a shock to be diagnosed with something like that, because at that time I was only in my early 30s. And I, like most people, kind of just associate arthritis with like and being older. Yeah. So It was a bit of a shock to the system, but I kind of just, I worked with my rheumatologist. I took the medications that were suggested, and I just kind of hoped that those symptoms would like effectively go away, either with the meds or by themselves. But it was really only after I had my son, he was born in 2017, and a few months later, the inflammation got really bad. Like the arthritis came back, but the inflammation also spread to other areas, and it spread to my eye. So I got diagnosed with a condition called scleritis, which is this permanent sort of redness, pain, and inflammation in the eye. And that's kind of when it got a bit scary, because I was on really high dose steroids, and the condition still wasn't sort of calming down and healing. And when I did my own research, I kind of found that scleritis was a rare complication of rheumatoid arthritis. And also, if it's not treated, it threatens your sight. So that was really where it was kind of a wake up call, really, where I thought, actually, modern medicine isn't like the silver bullet here, that actually I need to do other things to kind of heal myself. And the other sort of thing that I just felt intuitively is that all these different things that were happening with my health, they must be connected somehow. Like at the time, I was seeing like various different specialists for different conditions, but I just felt like, how can all this stuff be happening all at the same time? There must be some sort of root cause. So I started my own kind of research, and I literally spent every hour I had researching everything that I could, looking at different sort of papers and scientific research, but also looking at people who'd also gone through that journey and healed themselves as well, reaching out and talking to people. And as a result of some of that information, I started to change my diet. And a few months into that, I did see some results, but actually a few months into it, I still wasn't quite in the place that I wanted to be. I wasn't quite getting the results I wanted to. My eye wasn't where I wanted it to be. And I wasn't like, my blood test results weren't really reflective of what I was doing.
And how long did you have the condition for before you started looking to yourself?
So I was diagnosed in 2015, and I would say really I started actually researching in about 2018. So yeah,
Wow,
3 years of
3 years. So 3 years
yeah,
of just on steroids and whatever the medication the doctors were giving you,
exactly. So
and the
I did
specialists as well, right?
exactly, and I did. So when I was pregnant, I did actually go into remission, because it's interesting. If you have an autoimmune condition, some women do go into remission during that time, because effectively autoimmunity is your own body attacking itself, the immune system being on overdrive, right? And then when you have a baby, which is kind of in theory foreign in your body, that immunity has to switch off, because otherwise it would start attacking your own baby. So some people go into remission, which is what happened to me actually. But once my son was born, that's when it kind of came back like with a
That's so
vengeance.
interesting. It's just like your body's like, we need to protect this baby
Exactly. Yeah.
to have a healthy birth,
Yeah.
and then we'll deal with it later
Yeah.
once the baby's out. That is so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, your body does everything it can to prioritize your baby, right? Even in terms of nutrition. It's the reason why if you're not eating great, your baby will still be fine, because they'll be taking everything from you. But you might feel really tired and not quite energized. So yeah, it's reflected in autoimmunity as well. But like I said, yeah, it kind of came back much worse and spread after I had my son.
And what was it like? I know you just said that it went to remission during pregnancy. So at what point during your pregnancy did you just stop feeling the pain and the swelling for your arthritis?
I would say it was quite quick. Probably, oh gosh, I can't remember exactly, but definitely by the second trimester, it had gone, yeah, like I didn't have, because I used to have quite a lot of swelling in my hips, and I could walk just normally by the second trimester. So yeah, I'd say kind of by then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, so I was at the point where I was researching. I changed my diet. I was quite a few months into a restrictive diet, not getting the results that I wanted. So I stepped up looking at kind of more research, and looking and reaching out to people who had kind of again been through these conditions. And I came across this famous chef called Seamus Mullen, who has rheumatoid arthritis. And he had managed to heal his condition, and he spoke a lot about how he was able to use diet and lifestyle to keep his condition in long periods of remission. But also, like, one of the really big messages that was coming out from people was that the need to be holistic. So it wasn't just about diet, and like that's kind of where I kind of started looking at all the different areas in my life that might be contributing to my condition. So, sleep, the way that I moved, And like the really big one was actually like my mental well-being and my mindset. That was a huge one to like tackle. And it was kind of like it's only once I started looking at all those other areas that after like a few months of that, everything sort of slotted into place, and I got my first my first set of normal blood test results,
Wow.
which was like, yeah, it was like an amazing moment after such a long, difficult journey.
3 years, right? After 3 years, that's when
Exactly.
you starts seeing results. But
Yeah.
just want to take one step back, because you said you changed your diet. So at the beginning,
Yeah.
when you changed, so where did you get the information from, and what did you change?
So for me, I really got like lots of information just like online. So I was reading a lot of scientific papers. I was even just using Dr. Google, to be honest, and using YouTube. And I came across like a lot of kind of people who were giving really good, like solid, stellar advice. People like Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Andrew Weil as well, who's like very pro anti-inflammatory diet. These are people who've been talking about these concepts before like gut health and inflammation like became like almost mainstream.
Yeah.
And like, so people like that, I kind of just took some of their concepts and started applying it to myself. I also worked with a naturopath who kind of prescribed me lots of supplements to take right at the start, and also pointed me in the direction of a diet called autoimmune protocol. And that was the first diet that I started, basically. So that is quite, for anybody who hasn't come across that, it is very restrictive. It's a diet where it's no dairy, no gluten, no grains, no spices, no nuts or seeds, no inflammatory oils as well. So it
How
was
long did you do that for?
that was probably about 10 months I did that
Wow.
before I got to the point where I thought actually doing that for 10 months by that end point, still not having the results I wanted, I started feeling a bit low, actually, because like I'm quite a foodie. Like I'm not one of those people who just like eats to live. I do live to eat. And so I was starting to take the joy away from like enjoying food. And so kind of that's where I think like looking at the research and that message of being holistic came through. But also I kind of felt that there must be a way of keeping your diet a little bit more moderate and allowing yourself treats, while still kind of keeping the inflammation under control and the condition under control. So yeah, that's what I started kind of playing with and seeing like what kind of things can I have, how often can I have them, and how can I have them as well, really is the kind of the journey that I went on.
So during those 10 months, when you're on that autoimmune diet, so what was your typical day like when in terms of eating?
So it was, the whole diet was effectively just very much based on lots of vegetables and a good quality protein. So it was like, kind of organic eggs, or kind of if you're having animal protein, it had to be either wild if you're having fish, or organic grass-fed, etc. So really it was like wake up, a typical breakfast would actually, at that time I couldn't have eggs either. I've gone right back because autoimmune protocol like was no eggs either. So I'd pretty much just warm up whatever I'd made for dinner. And then for lunch, it would just be like a big salad with some form of good protein. And dinner would really just be the same. Or I'd make big soups as well and like try and get like extra nutrition in that way. And yeah, it was, and then I found like different ways of making like flatbreads and stuff like that using like coconut flour, just to try and make things a bit interesting. Using like, I made curries, but trying to use like, like obviously I couldn't use like lots of spices, so trying to just instill flavor using herbs, things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So I guess
yeah,
you missed the spices as well, right?
yeah, definitely. I'm from an Indian heritage, so like I need my food
Spice in
to
your life,
yeah,
huh?
yeah. And it's just like it's the enjoyment, isn't it? That actually like now I do kind of really feel that I'm at a place now where I'm able to, like with my diet, I have things in much more moderation. So my diet's still very much based on like lots of vegetables, good quality protein. I still kind of avoid gluten, dairy, sugar as like they're not big parts of my diet, but I'll have them as treats. And it's about kind of understanding how you can have things. So for example, with like bread, I'm not going to go out and buy white bread, right? Because it's so processed. All the nutrition and like the vitamins has been stripped out of it. I know it's then fortified with other
Depleted,
things.
absolutely
Yeah,
gone, and then put them back in. But what you realize is, if people look into it, like for example, like folic acid, one, it's not the real stuff, and
yeah,
two, it's like there's so much of it in the bread.
yeah,
Your body's just not going to
yeah,
process it how it would do naturally. So it's like what the on earth is going on. And like
Yeah, exactly.
because I don't eat wheat products whatsoever, and like
Okay.
when I tell people why, they're just like they look at me like I'm an alien.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've got that as well when you talk about, oh, how you
Yeah.
eat now.
Yeah. So that was like very much part of my journey as well, actually, of like how to manage sort of social situations.
Big thing,
And
such a
the
big thing.
the response to diet. So actually that was one of probably the most difficult thing at first, where like the first 6 months of changing my diet, it also coincided with lots and lots of Indian weddings. And if you've ever been to an Indian wedding, you know it's literally all about food. So it would be like I'd be sat at a table where everyone's having like all this amazing, like delicious food.
So it's
And
like
I was sat.
pass that lentil. I'll make a meal out of that lentil soup and the
Yeah,
side, isn't it?
I was actually there with my lunchbox with my salad and my protein, really. So,
Yeah,
and like at first that was so difficult because first of all, obviously you just want to have that food as comfort, isn't it? Second of all, you just want to be part of the crowd. And third, you get questions about it. So yeah, it is just like the spotlight is on you to like almost defend why you're doing what you're doing. But actually,
yeah,
over time, what I found is that like I changed my sort of perspective on it, where I started telling myself that I'm the kind of person that can sit at a table with 10 people eating pizza and not eat that pizza. Because actually, I have my standards at such a high level in terms
yeah.
of what I want for my own health that I'm able to have that sort of discipline. And it almost became like a superpower that I actually almost enjoyed
100%.
being
Yeah.
in those situations where it's like, and that when the waiter gets to me, I'm going to choose the salad. And yeah, it's something I still tap into now, actually.
Yeah, and I think it's a thing of like, okay, this is who I am. You either take it or leave it. I don't really care. It's just the way I am. Like
Yeah.
I got quite a few things that I'm a bit diva-ish about. Like I don't use a microwave. I don't eat wheat products. So many examples that I've like this social science of this whole situation of like when you change your diet and the way you live, and because everyone else is not living that way, is such a big thing because
Yeah.
I guess because everyone's so used to living in a certain that kind of way. And
Yeah.
once you do your research, like you and me, and we realize, okay, that's not good for me. I want to eat this instead. You start getting a thick skin, and you just realize, you know what? This again, like I said, this is me, and this is the way I am.
Yeah.
Your reaction isn't going to make me feel any different. And there's other things as well, like because I love going to the gym as well, because I feel great. It's just
Yeah.
part and parcel of being holistic as well.
Yeah.
There's been so many situations where I've seen people when people want to take a photo, they say, "Oh, hide my belly because it's gone so big."
Right.
I mean, as long as I'm in a healthy situation and I'm looking after myself, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I look after myself. I'm staying away from the breads and the wheat and the heavy
Yeah.
the white carbohydrates. I stay away from that for that exact for those are the one reasons where like I don't have to worry about those kind of things because I want to be healthy all year round because
Yeah.
because I just think it's just the most natural thing to do. And we kind of live in an unnatural world where you got processed foods everywhere. People
Yep.
don't, and the most simple thing people can do is just read the ingredient label.
Yeah.
And I just feel like
That's one of my top tips, actually.
we'll
Reading
talk
it.
about
Yeah.
later. Okay, we'll talk about that later. But it's like one of the most simple things to do. But and I've just seen it, it's like you've just bought that candy bar or candy or whatever it is for the kids, but it literally says like it will give your children attention deficit disorder at the
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And when I say it, people are just like there's nothing in the brain that just goes, hold on a sec. It actually warns you that there's an issue with this with children, but you've still gone and given it. So I do feel like there's some sort of like psychological situation going on, but you know, we can talk
Yeah.
about that later
Yeah. No,
on.
I think it's interesting because I think like when I was on the journey, I definitely felt quite isolated at times where actually I was doing things in a very different way to kind of what I was used to and what I was seeing around me. But actually, like interestingly, kind of like of course you're going to have like comments and kind of pushback on certain decisions that you make. I mean that's just life. It's the same with anything that you do. But at the same time I had so many people that kind of like would talk to me about my diet and were actually genuinely interested and supportive of what I was doing. And I've seen kind of like I've like it's been like it was actually like a 5 year journey because I was diagnosed in 2015. It was 2020 that I got my first blood test results. And like over that time when I kind of like started changing my nutrition, but even now it's like I can see the impact that I've had on people around me. Like people are more like will talk to me about kind of their health, will talk to me about how to buy products, will change their own habits because of discussions that I have had. And I think like it's kind of like when you see someone who's actually living in a different way and has had the results that I've had, and like people who just look well and take care of themselves, I think it is really inspiring for people, actually. It just like shows you that it's possible. And like that is always my big message, that if you do have a chronic condition or you're diagnosed with a chronic condition, it's not the end of your journey, it's actually the start of your journey. And like I think that's been the really amazing thing that I've just seen, like even sort of subconsciously, people around me are starting to make changes where like they go dairy free and then they tell me actually like they feel better, they're not bloated anymore. Or the same with gluten. Like even with gluten and bread, one of the things I do now is like it's about understanding how you buy those products. It's not like you just can like I can understand that for some people it just doesn't work and you don't have it, and I respect that. I'd like, but actually personally, what I found is that I'm not going to have the white bread. It's super processed. It's going to spike my blood sugar. There's really no nutrition in it. Like you're saying, lots of things are stripped out, added back in, but without lots of other nutrients that are not there, right? So manganese, for example, is not then fortified back in. So but actually like choosing something, if you're going to have bread, even if it's a treat, have something like a sourdough or a rye bread, which is like the sourdough, for example, is fermented. So it's like naturally lower gluten, easier to digest. You're going to have more probiotics from the fermentation. So these like more traditional breads are like much better options. And I think it's just like starting that conversation, that education with people where it's like, you don't like there are options for doing things. You don't have to just like become a hermit and not live your life.
100%. And that
there are ways to do this.
You can start making breads at home. It's probably eat more better because nothing's gonna be stripped out.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and for me, that's why I prefer making things on my own at home. Like I give an example, because I don't have flour. There's gram flour. I make a pizza out of that, and like it tastes amazing because like I have like leftover mince or vegetables that are over and just dash it on top. And there's so many people out there online as well where they have like recipes for alternative foods, and it's like, you know, guys, make the most of these people who are on Instagram, for example, because it's free and you can just save it. And I just look back at the recipe and just make it.
No, I totally agree. I think you really have to make it a habit to be consistently inspired, because like if you're looking at new recipes and different things you can eat, it keeps you motivated over the long term. Like when I first started, definitely I saw it as an adventure, like looking at all these different recipes, different things, rather than focusing on what have I taken out, all the things I can't eat. I was like trying to focus much more on like what can I still eat, and looking at people who do have like amazing recipes online, and like I'll kind of give you advice of how to do the pizzas and like the bagels and the breads and stuff like that, but using almond flour, for example. So I agree. It's about like there's so many options.
There's always a way. Yeah, there's so many options. You know, I remember this taxi driver said to me once years ago, if there's a will, there's a way. And it's true. It's true. And it's just being committed to that and just going through with it. I just wanted to quickly ask, we did go through the process of you making those changes. So you said that basically you got to a stage where the specialists, they couldn't, none of the drugs are working, right? So how many specialists did you see? Was it just the one that you had, or?
So I was, for my scleritis, I was
that's right. So it was the eye and the bone as well, right?
So rheumatoid arthritis was through a rheumatologist, and then the scleritis was like managed under Moorfields, like which is a specialist eye hospital. So I would just have like my regular checkups at both, just to check to see what was happening in terms of both.
Okay, cool. Could you just let everyone know what rheumatoid arthritis exactly is from your experience?
So it's an inflammatory disease, actually. So the interesting thing about rheumatoid arthritis is that it definitely is well known for affecting the joints. So it causes inflammation, pain. You get reduced mobility in those joints. It's symmetrical generally. So kind of if you have pain in like a right wrist, it will then flip over to the left wrist. And that's the sort of pattern around it. The really interesting thing about RA compared to something like osteoarthritis is that RA is actually systemic. So you can get it affects your whole body. In fact, it can affect any organ except your brain. So you can get inflammation in your heart tissue as well as a result of rheumatoid arthritis. You can get lots of people get things like fatigue and kind of fevers as well. So it is like it is actually a disease systemically that affects your whole body. So
Wow.
that's, yeah, and inflammation is at the root of it, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So was it just a case of, you mentioned Seamus Mullen? Is that his name?
Yeah, Seamus Mullen. Yeah.
Seamus Mullen. So was
Yeah.
it a case of just looking online for these guys, or did you get any books that helped you for these
I
things?
I would say like most for in diet terms, it was mostly kind of online and reaching out to people and speaking to them, and yeah, like looking on Instagram to read about people's stories as well. I did like work with a naturopath initially as well,
That's
who
right,
kind of
yeah.
pointed me to the autoimmune protocol. I think the issue I had with that autoimmune protocol is just that it was so restrictive. And actually, when I spoke to the naturopath about not getting those conditions, I think her view was very much you need to get stricter on the diet. And actually, that hasn't been my experience. My experience is that you do need to look at things holistically. And actually, one of the key books as part of that holistic like realization was a book called Letting Go by David Hawkins. And like I've shared this on my Instagram before,
I
but it
saw it.
really was, yeah, it's like a game. It was such a game changer for me because it talks about how you manage your emotions, and like stress is such a big component of inflammation and like chronic conditions really. So it really helped me to understand like how, kind of how people suppress and repress their emotions. So like there's just the classic things of you distract yourself with food or like working or whatever, just to
Or
not feel
avoidance, right?
avoidance.
So
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
like it creates a deeper layer within yourself. It's like
Yeah.
this issue is gonna go so deep where it's gonna turn into an illness.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And it's realizing that actually those things that when you do push down those emotions, they emerge in some way, right? They can't just stay there. And like actually I am a strong believer that definitely contributed to my disease development. So it's like actually that was an absolute game changer of understanding that if rather than pushing these things away, like embracing it and just like allowing it to be, just kind of releases it like so quickly. And it was just brilliant for like managing stress. So that was one of the key books that I love. I also really love like the holistic psychologist. I don't know if you follow her, but she's like she just has really like thought provoking posts about psychology
I
and
think
on
I do
Instagram.
follow her. I think I do
Yeah,
follow her. Yeah.
I really like her stuff. And there's also someone else called Emily Fletcher who has something called Ziva meditation. And meditation has also been like a key component in managing stress in my life as well.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
Going back to Letting Go, the
Yep.
book, because I've come from a family where it seems like a lot of anger has been suppressed and it's like it's been coming out in the wrong way.
Mm.
So now that you know about um, ways of dealing with stress, and because you've gone through it yourself, which is the best way to learn, I think.
Yep.
I've got kids now, and I allow them. I say to when they're upset, express it, but do it in a different way. So it's
Yep.
just let out, so it's not kept in all the time. So whenever I spot it, I see my daughter. She's very upset. I say, "Oh, well, how are you feeling right now? What's the matter?" And it's like little things like that, little
Yeah.
tweaks like that can help them in big ways. So do you? How old is your son? Sorry.
He's 6. Yeah,
Okay,
he's
so
6.
do you find that
Yeah.
you're doing that with your son as well, or?
Definitely. It was like it's a really big part of my parenting, and like again a really big realization that okay, the I have those patterns, and do I can I do things in a different way with my son? And I'm like very pro emotions. I'm like actually I prefer to know exactly what's going on and for things to be out in the open, because like I always notice that if he's really upset and he's crying, if he just lets it out, it's done within a minute or two. Whereas, like, that sort of suppression, you don't know where that's going to end up. Like, is it going to result in some like longer term, like mental health issues? I don't know. I mean, you try your best, of course. Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's just going to all work out perfectly, but yeah, I definitely use that approach. Like, I'm really interested in the whole sort of gentle parenting and how you kind of like allow your children to be who they are and allow them to have their emotions as they are. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely do the same thing.
And one more thing I'd like to go back on what you said is like when you suppress or hold something back. Let's say, for example, if anyone's in a relationship out there, the worst thing you can do is hold it for such a long time and not get it over
Yeah.
and done with on the same day. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something I've learned over the years because
Yeah.
I was the kind of person like, oh, I just kind of avoidance, and it
Yeah.
does it doesn't mushroom into a bigger thing later on, because like it's still on your mind. You haven't dealt with it. You haven't sorted it out. So for whoever's listening out there, when you have an issue with someone, just deal with it straight away on the day.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
when you leave it out for such a long time, it does become a bigger problem for yourself more than anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you were saying, it's how you do it, right? You don't have to, it's not about attacking somebody, but it's about having a conversation in a way that is empathetic to their perspective and how they might feel as well. And kind of, I agree. It's such a key part of like a good long-term relationship, definitely.
Yeah. I want to talk about any other speed bumps along the way when you change your diet. So after for 10 months straight, this is during you saw the naturopath, when she just gave you so many supplements to take. What kind of supplements did she give you?
There was just lots of sort of antimicrobials, like oil of oregano. I remember distinctly. I can't remember all of those. So many. I definitely had some things that I still actually really, I really value. Things like omega-3, like the kind of good quality fish oil. I had like high dose turmeric, those sorts of things. Like just very key things to try and bring the inflammation down. But I remember there was like lots of things just to almost like wipe out the bad bacteria in my gut. I'm not sure like how effective some of those supplements. So I think sometimes like what can happen is that you go from having lots of medications to then having lots of supplements. And so like my experience of it is that I think there is a place for supplements, but they're not necessarily kind of again a silver bullet where they are a replacement for diet. So I think you just like my thing is like definitely use everything that gets you better. Like even when I was on my medications, I was doing everything together. I was still on steroids when I changed my diet, and I was like, I kind of saw the steroids and the treatment as being something that my doctors were supporting me on, but diet and lifestyle, my responsibility. And kind of I saw them working together, and it wasn't until I got my like normal blood test results that my rheumatologist herself said, okay, like it's time to start tapering them off. So I would never say like do one extreme to another. There's a place for all of it. But I do think, it's the same with supplements. I think you can quite easily go from one extreme to the other. So it was 10 months of autoimmune protocol and taking those supplements as well, like you said.
Okay. Great. So so basically you got the green light from your doctor basically once you got your bloods back, and that's when you were like, okay, this protocol is working. And then is that when you said, okay, I need to start making some changes where it will work for me? Is that what happened?
No, so it was kind of like initially I took out kind of the big gut irritants that I'd read about. So things like gluten, dairy and sugar were the big ones. So you can imagine I was a very fun person to live with for a few months. So I took those three.
Look, listen, we're fun as well, we're fun. We just do it a different way.
So I took those three out, and then I started the autoimmune protocol, and I did those really, really slowly because actually I'd read a lot about how if you change things kind of overnight, you can get quite extreme like reactions called die-off reactions, where the bacteria that were in your gut that were dependent on those foods, they start dying and releasing toxins, and then you feel like you can get flares, or you can get a whole host of other issues like fever and fatigue, etc. And obviously the more extreme you do it in the shorter period, the more extreme those side effects are going to be. So that's why I thought, actually, let me do it longer term. And also like psychologically now, when I think about it, that was the best thing I could have done, because again, like everyone's done that thing where they change something overnight and you sustain it for a few days and then you're like, can you pass me the Doritos? Right. So it's just actually like it's so much logically to do those small steps at each time, cement one change and then move on to the other. So I took those groups out. Then I started the autoimmune protocol, which was obviously more restrictive than just those 3 food groups. I did that for 10 months. That was when I hit sort of low, thinking I'm not getting my normal blood test results yet, still got symptoms. And that's when I started looking holistically and I started making some of those changes. So actually the whole journey really from that start where I first took out gluten, dairy and sugar to getting my normal blood test results was about a 2-year period. It was like the holistic side did take quite a while to kind of play with to see what actually worked. And I think also what I didn't really appreciate maybe right at the beginning of the journey, is just how long like healing can take. I think like sometimes when you start something, I was like, okay, I'm going to change my diet in 4 weeks. I'll be back
Mm.
doing what I was doing because it will all be fine. And actually, like if I think about it now, like even when like so I'm in the middle of like a formal qualification for naturopathic nutrition, and one of the things that we really look at is like the landscape of what's happened to somebody, like from the minute they're born to where they are now. And like when I think about that for myself, you can really see that like the disease didn't just manifest overnight. It was like so many years of different things, like antibiotic use and an inflammatory diet, not great sleep, high levels of stress, like
Putting things in the body
yeah,
that shouldn't be in there,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
I've been saying this. I said this to someone recently. It's like these things don't just happen by accident. They don't just happen. They happen
yeah,
because something's been coming in that shouldn't be in there.
yeah,
And if you, and basically, I'm just echoing what you're saying. Like if you are living a certain way, mentally, physically, and eating foods that you shouldn't, it's going to catch up with you. It is going
yeah,
to catch up with you, and however long you were in that state, it's going to take you a while to get back to how your body
exactly,
should be. So
exactly.
patience is a big thing, because me personally, I feel I'd love to hear your idea on this. I feel that because we're so used to going to a GP, getting a medication, and it's just sorted out straight away. Mentally thinking, oh, we can take this, we can change that. So it should happen within 4 weeks, just like you said.
Yeah, I think everyone's looking for a silver bullet, aren't they? It's just really easy to take the idea of taking one thing and for everything to be resolved just feels like it's so appealing, right? And actually, yeah, that would be my biggest message, that it's not an easy process and it's not an easy journey. That doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. It absolutely is.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have to be consistent for like a long period of time. Like you will start feeling better, but it depends on what your overall goal is. Like for me, it was always like the long-term picture of when I started looking into medications, it was like I kind of understood, which is what I didn't understand for many, many years of my life, which is that they just, for chronic conditions, medications treat the symptoms. They don't get to the root cause, right? So, and those medications come with side effects. Again, this is not me saying you shouldn't be taking medications. I do believe in getting well. But at the same time, that's not where I wanted to be. I wanted to, like, I had like a young son. I wanted to be around, I wanted to be healthy, and I wanted to be medication free. And so, with that goal in mind, if I'd spent like however 30 years creating a disease, it wasn't going to kind of reverse in like a few weeks' time. So it is about being patient. It doesn't mean it's not working, but you do have to be consistent and you do have to be patient.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of so when did you start seeing changes then, would you say?
I would say about 2 months in, or like 4 to 6 weeks, I started seeing like changes that I wasn't necessarily expecting or going for. So, like the first one was really like my skin. So, I'd always suffered from adult acne. So, from like my early 20s, I'd always had like adult acne, and nothing had really kind of changed it. I'd taken like some like medications and stuff for that as well. And again, it wasn't getting to the root cause, so it wouldn't really completely heal it. And when I'd see people in those first few weeks who hadn't seen me for a while, that would be the first thing that they would comment on, just like how clear my skin was, how it was glowing. So that was a big change that I saw. When people hadn't seen me for a while, they would see me and they would comment on that. They were like in terms of how clear it was, how much it was glowing. But then I also started seeing things like in those first few months, like I didn't feel uncomfortable after I'd eaten, for example. I never felt bloated. I never had this like feeling of like rushing to the bathroom because I'd had some reaction or response to something. And also just like my sleep was better. I actually felt a bit more positive, like I had better energy. Lots of things like that actually, which I wasn't necessarily expecting or going for. Like those were the kind of short-term things. Then more medium term, what I saw happening was my eye, the redness in my eye, it would fluctuate. So one day it would go down, the next day it would be back. And that pattern stayed for quite a while. I'd say I only really saw that kind of really settle, kind of getting to about a year and a half mark. So that was when it started kind of completely staying white for a
So
more
what did the
permanent basis.
specialist give you for that then? Was like drops and stuff?
So that's what I started with, but I was on very high dose steroids for those.
The
I was
eye.
on for the eye, yeah. So I was on like 40 milligrams plus every day, that which obviously had its own side effects. So with steroids, it just deteriorate your bones. So I got osteoporosis in my bones as well, which again I'm happy to say is like on its way to healing at the moment. But yeah, it did have like obviously it has an impact, but that's what I was on for my eye. But yeah, the eye definitely took about a year and a half for that to settle. And then the last thing to kind of slot into place were my joints. So like it was almost, that pattern of the first thing that arrived, which was my right wrist. That was the first place I ever had a flare up. That was the last thing to go. So yeah, it was that kind of pattern where it was just nice to also have like the changes which you weren't anticipating, because you could see actually there were lots of things that were actually off balance, which you didn't realize. So yeah.
Brilliant. What did you find easy? Well, I guess the first question I asked, what did you find difficult? And then we can talk about what you found easy during this journey.
I would say, I mean, it was what I was talking about before in terms of difficulty, which was the social settings, because like that did feel really out of comfort zone, being out there and doing things in a very different way. Like I said, I was able to flip that perspective, and actually it's something that I still carry with me now. And actually now, as time has gone on, I don't find social settings stressful anymore, because like, first of all, I mean, my identity with people has changed anyway, but also I know how to navigate restaurants now. Like I know I can still go out and I can have a treat if I want to, but I can also stay disciplined if I want to. Like I know which things are going to sit well with me. So what started off as being quite difficult, actually like over time you learn those tools and techniques of how to navigate these different things, and understand, like I think socializing is very important actually. It's so great again for stress level and connection. So I definitely wouldn't want to stop doing that. So that was initially the most difficult thing, I think. There were definitely a few things that kind of kept me going as well, I would say, in terms of my motivation. I'd say like there were three big areas. Like, so even in those difficult moments, there were three big things which helped me. Like the number one thing was like the whole connection of what is your why that Simon Sinek talks about. Like that was like just so key right at the start as well, of
That's why I
understanding
do what
like,
I do now. Finding out
yeah,
what your why is so important, because then it kind of
yeah,
like pushes you to just keep going, because then it's like,
exactly.
I'm doing it because of this reason. That's why I'm doing it, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no ifs and buts. It's like, okay, this is exactly why I'm doing it.
Yeah. And I think you have to be really clear about what it is and resonate with that why, right? Because like for me personally, I've never really connected with like the aesthetics as a goal as such. Like I've always needed something like, I don't know, bigger, like how I feel, or kind of, yeah, the kind of healing of a chronic condition are things that motivated me. Definitely another big motivator for me in terms of that why was being a healthy, energized mum for my son. But also, if I'm really honest, it was also just about me, because I think I came to a realization where I was like, actually, I deserve to feel good and I deserve to have good health. And I'd spent so long kind of saying yes to people and doing things for everybody else, that it was like this realization that it was time to like really prioritize myself and my own well-being. So that why is like so, so key before you start anything. And the other thing that I found very helpful was actually changing your identity. So when you have a chronic condition, I think you can quite quickly become that chronic condition, where you even say like my arthritis or my condition. It's like, you can't. I think one of the things that I was really good at was always separating myself from that disease, where it was like, this is something I have, but I'm not a sick person. I'm not I'm not that disease. And I think having that separation is really helpful. And again, it's that identity of like, you're going to be changing lots of patterns. So like the way you eat, your daily habits, all of those things you have to think about what would someone who's, like someone who's aspirational for you in terms of health, what would they be doing right now? And you have to become that identity. That's so key as well in those like very difficult moments. And the third thing that I came across that I found really interesting, which helped my motivation, was this area of epigenetics. And that was like, yeah, that was amazing when I came across that, because that basically talks about so for me, when I got diagnosed, I just thought everything was genetic because I have arthritis in the family. So, and I just thought, okay, it's like, there's nothing I can do about it almost, right? It's hopeless if it's genetic. the area of epigenetics taught me that actually everyone does have genes, that everyone has genes for different things. Like for me, it's arthritis, other people's might be diabetes, etc., etc. But whether those genes actually express themselves and you develop that condition is mainly dependent on your diet and lifestyle. So for me, at the beginning of my life, my diet and lifestyle meant that effectively I flicked the switch on, so I developed the condition. But if I'd switched it on, that would also mean that if I changed the diet and lifestyle, I could also turn it off again. And that
That's
really
right.
motivated me, because I thought actually if it's just genetic, there's not really anything you can never do. And it's not empowering. Whereas actually, if you know there's something that is within my control, then I just have to be consistent. And those were kind of the three things that really got me through some of those difficult moments. Because I think there are times where, you've had a bad day and you just want to, you go back to your comfortable ways, and you have to tap into those three areas. They were really helpful for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because what people need to realize is the genes hold the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
And ultimately, this is the reason why, when people say, "Oh, why haven't I got it then?" It's because your genes are different to mine.
Yep.
That's
exactly.
the reason. Like, do you find that with your son at the moment, or?
So he's had his own. When he was born, he had a dairy intolerance, which again, no one like. It's interesting because actually, like doing a lot of the research for him also kind of coincided with me doing lots of research with myself, and it all kind of like correlated to gut health, right? And one of the things that I didn't know was that actually your children inherit if you're a mum, they inherit your gut microbiome. So depending on, and this is not a guilt trip, because I know mums
guys,
just feel
this is
guilty
not
about
a guilt
time.
trip.
Yeah.
Do not feel please,
No.
and I think I've said this in a previous podcast, this is not to make everyone feel bad. It's just a situation that we're in, and this is just information.
Yeah. And so actually, like, that kind of that inherited gut microbiome kind of meant that both of us had to go through like a process of healing our own guts. And like, he, as a baby, he had a dairy intolerance, which again wasn't really diagnosed. I sort of like just figured out that that's what he had as a result of my own research and seeing what his symptoms were, because I just felt like some of the things that he was experiencing weren't right. So like we almost went on that journey together. And interestingly, both of us got very similar results, where he's now able to have dairy because he did go through that process of like eating foods which heal that gut, doing various things which kind of help him calm his like nervous system down. So I think like he's definitely got a bit of both me and his dad, definitely. But it was the gut issues for sure. Like we kind of went on that journey together. So
what kind of food did you give him to heal his gut?
So I did a lot of kind of broths and soups, like bone broths were like really big, like in terms of just putting that into his soups. But really, I would say like just focusing on very good whole foods, like just lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, lots of really good protein, really trying to limit obviously the sugar. And kind of just I gave him, like, he was on probiotics as well. That was another key thing, having things like kefir, like all these like foods which are.
Was he a bit picky about the taste?
He was actually okay, to be honest. He was actually okay with, like, I'd say he's become a bit pickier now as he's exposed to more of the sweets and snacks around him. But when he was younger, he was actually quite open to a lot of that. So it was okay. Yeah.
Amazing. So who do you look up to currently in the health space, other than me, of course?
Of course. I would say, kind of a couple of the people I mentioned before, like the ones that I admire are the ones who have been giving that stellar advice for such a long time, at a time when maybe it wasn't even like supported really. So I really like Dr. Andrew Weil for his anti-inflammatory lifestyle. He talks a lot about like calming inflammation down. I've always found him really helpful. Dr. Mark Hyman as well. He's just like, I mean, he's almost like legendary in the well-being world. So he always has like really stellar advice. And like I said, in terms of psychology, holistic psychologist, and Emily Fletcher for Ziva meditation. Those are like, I just think there are a lot of people doing really good stuff in the health space though. And it's just ever evolving. So it's just it's a good, I mean, it's a good thing because there are so many resources now. But that, yeah, I definitely admire those people.
Brilliant, brilliant. Meditation. So, if you could just tell everyone what is meditation and how do you meditate, because I think a lot of people don't understand what it is.
So meditate, I think a lot of people think meditation is just switching off your thoughts, and it's not. It's really the process of like it's the process of silence, really, and going inward and just witnessing what you're feeling or what you're thinking, but not becoming attached to it is the way that I think about it. It's, I think if you go into meditation, and I'm guilty for this as well, if you go into it thinking either you want a result at the end of it straight away, or it's going to completely switch off anything you think about, it's always going to feel like a disappointment because it's impossible to switch your brain off. It's just like it is that practice of like becoming aware of what you're thinking and just not feeling sort of an emotional response to those thoughts. And good ways that you can do that are obviously focusing on the breath or becoming more aware of your body. What I like about Ziva meditation is that a key part of it includes transcendental meditation. So it's basically meditating on a word that you're given, and it's a word that doesn't like mean anything. It's a non-word basically. So if you actually do like TM, which is what like transcendental meditation for short, if you go and actually do a formal course, they will give you your own word. So you're given your own sort of personal word to meditate on. But it's just it's really interesting doing that process because the word itself doesn't mean anything, but it's just you just keep bringing everything back to that word and focusing on that word. And that after doing, so Ziva meditation is like 15 minutes twice a day. And I did that when I first started doing that. I would say that's the only real meditation that I tried that after a few months, I really noticed my response in different situations was different. So in situations where I would have felt really stressed out, I actually just felt like quite calm and didn't feel particularly, didn't have a big reaction to anything. So yeah, I just think that even if you can't do 15 minutes twice a day, I do think there's value in just starting off with even 5 minutes. It's definitely something, and I'll be honest, I have been guilty for like falling off that. But I think it's never about getting somewhere and then just never having any setbacks. It's just like get back on it. So that's something that I'm doing again at the moment as well. So when you do it, it's really interesting because when I first started it, it's almost similar to when I first started the diet change, where you have like really big responses to it at first. So the first few weeks, it's like, don't make any big decisions, right? Because you're like going to be having big emotions, and it's almost like the toxic side of that's been held within coming out.
Yeah.
And then after that, things settle. So
brilliant. That's brilliant. So what are you doing now with yourself then? Because I remember when we last talked or had a chat, you mentioned that you were doing a course and you mentioned in the College of Naturopathic Medicine. So we'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so when I first got all my like normal blood test results, the reaction of my rheumatologist kind of made me realize that actually what I'd done was like quite unique. And what I started doing is like helping my like family and my friends, and they started getting results. Now, like they didn't necessarily get a full-on reversal, but they still got better results than they would have if they just relied on modern medicine alone. So that kind of gave me the confidence and the realization that I wanted to take that first step of studying a formal qualification. So I started studying naturopathic nutrition at the College of Naturopathic Medicine 2 years ago now. So I've done 1 year of biomedicine, 1 year of nutrition. I'm just about to start my final year now. And then once I finish that, I'll be able to formally advise people and set up my formal practice and start helping people with their own diet and lifestyle and personalize it to make it work for their life. Because that's something that I'm really passionate about, where I like don't advocate doing something for like anyone can do something for 3 weeks, but it's about how do you make something work for each person's life or that for those long-term results. So that's what I'm focused on at the moment. I also do post on Instagram, something I'm hoping to do more of more regularly. And I'm developing my website at the moment as well.
Yeah, amazing. Top 3 tips for anyone improving their diet.
So I would say number one, the first thing I always say to anybody that asks me this question is if you just start with half of your plate as veg, you have moved in such a good direction already. So like if you're having a plate of pasta, just ask yourself, it's like that training, isn't it? Of like, where are the vegetables in this meal? So I just, like, a few months ago, I did a talk called Eat the Rainbow for 5 and 6 year olds. And it's really the same concept for grown-ups. That was for children, but actually it's the same thing applies for adults, where it's like, are you eating enough vegetables and are you having enough colors? Because all of those colors represent different vitamins and different phytonutrients. So they're going to have different benefits in your body. So one of the things that I definitely always recommend with starting is half your plate of rainbow foods. So at least have 3 different colors of foods on your plate is the number one starting point, I think. Number 2, I would say, is try and keep things sustainable. So anybody who's advising you and saying that you can get results in a few weeks, I wouldn't necessarily listen to that. I think it is about just focus on one small step at a time and just take things slowly. Because like I was saying, I think that works both in terms of physiologically, you're not having extreme reactions to any significant extreme change, but also psychologically, you're setting yourself up for a much better long-term result. So even if you are thinking about kind of removing food groups, just do it very, very slowly and take it one step at a time. Actually, I would say if you are in a place where you want to take things like dairy and gluten out, it would probably be helpful to see a practitioner to help guide you through that process.
Yeah.
And then the third one, which we talked about slightly earlier, was like read your labels. So this is just such a key one because like I think there's so much confusion around especially things like that are labeled healthy and gluten-free and dairy-free. So I just have a couple of like rules in my head when I'm shopping and I'm buying like a packaged product. So like I just ask myself, when I read the ingredients, I just think, could I recreate this in my kitchen? So is it whole food basically that I could recreate in my kitchen? If it's got lots of E numbers and preservatives and emulsifiers, I probably wouldn't be able to recreate that. So that would be the first thing that I look at. Number 2 I look at is sugar one of the first 2 ingredients, which like you'd be surprised at how often that happens in things that you don't expect sugar to be in.
Oh
So
man, before you go on, I remember I remember my mother-in-law got a packaged salad box from Aldi.
yeah,
And I've already read the label months before. I was like, you know, there's sugar in there, right? She's like, no, there's no sugar in here. I was like, have you read the label? I've turned it over, and one of the first ingredients for this salad box
yeah,
it's got all the colors in there: sweet corn, peppers, the greens, everything. It had sugar in there,
well, as
and
one of the first ingredients.
I believe so. Yeah, one of the first
Wow,
ingredients. So it's like
yeah,
again, going to what you said, reading the ingredients like it's free. All you
yeah.
gotta do is just turn it around and read it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I do think there is a lot of confusion around the healthy stuff because you do just see that. I just remember a few months ago, my husband actually picked up this drink from M&S and it was water and it was labeled water with a touch of fruit. And turn it around, there's sugar in there, first of all. And second of all, there wasn't any fruit in there at all. It was all just flavorings and like preservatives. So it's really important to turn around and like just yeah, even I get caught out if you're not turning it over and like reading the labels. So definitely sugar is a big one. And then like what I like to do is try and stick to products which have a lower number of ingredients overall. So ideally 5 to 7. So they just haven't been over processed, over manipulated is really helpful as well. So
Yeah. So like when if I ever feel like having bread, I'll just get like a pure rye bread and like it's just rye flour,
yep,
some salt, water. I think I'm pretty sure that's
yep,
what it is. It doesn't taste like bread,
yep,
but when you toast it, it does actually taste at least decent.
yeah, yeah.
But if I
Great
ever did
fiber as
want
well.
it, yeah, plenty of fiber as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the next round is a quick fire round. You don't, it's a quick
Okay.
fire
Oh
round. All
dear.
right. So just a bit of fun.
Go for it.
All right, and you got to answer as quick as possible. All right. So the first question is, what 3 things can you not live without?
God. Protein, uh, vegetables, walking.
Okay. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Um, God. I would say you will get there.
If there was a movie based on your life, what would it be called?
I mean, I would just say it's the Rocky movies, really. Like never
Which one?
giving up.
1, 2, or 3?
I'm a bit controversial because I
Oh
like Rocky
no.
3. I like Rocky 3.
Yeah, Rocky 3, is
Yeah,
that the, because there's
that's
quite a
Mr.
few,
T.
isn't there? Is that
That's
Mr.
Mr.
T? Right, okay, because I'm sure there's like a Rocky 5 and 6. But okay.
I would just say like I think the thing that I've always noticed about myself is that I really never give up. I've got like if I'm
It's
really
amazing.
focused on something, I'm quite determined. So definitely that's the way I vibe with the Rocky films.
It's amazing. What's your favorite naughty treat?
Oh, I love like a good cheese. Like a good cheese. And I love dumplings as well, like Chinese dumplings. They're more like with chili oil. Yeah, they're my
Ooh, I'm like
favorite
my
as well.
wife. My wife's the
Yeah.
same. Right, last question on this quick fire round. If you could choose to have a superpower, what would it be? So if you could choose to have a superpower, what would it be?
I could just have a superpower. I guess like just more kind I guess more maybe more patience. Just being like sometimes like when I really want to achieve something, I can get quite results quickly. And I've had to hone being a bit more patient that things happen when they're supposed to happen.
That's
So
fine.
just having a bit more faith that things happen when they're supposed to, in the way that they're supposed to. I think I'd like to have a bit more of that.
Cool, cool. Right, now we're near to the end now. So what does health mean to you?
I would say with health, like to me, like taking care of your health is like the ultimate act of self-care. So it's like people always talk about like having baths and like things like that, which I think there's place for. But
Oh,
really, if
definitely.
you don't, it's all the cliche things. Like if you don't have your health, there's really nothing you can do. Like about you really realize how integral it is to being able to live the life that you want to live. So to me, it's the ultimate act of self-care, really looking after your health. But also, I would also say that I see health um, as your own responsibility. It's not something to delegate or outsource to anybody. It's for you to take care of and take full ownership of. So that those are the ways that I see them.
That's amazing. And that's it. We're done.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much. We've gone
Thank you.
8 minutes over time, but I'm sorry for that. It's just that we've been having so much fun with the conversation.
It's been
Um,
really good. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Where can people find you?
So Instagram is probably the best place. I'm at Healthy Up, so it's spelled HEALTHIUP. And also my website is healthyup.com as well.
Amazing, amazing. Well, good luck with everything. You said you got 1 year left, have you, in your
Yes.
course? So
Yeah.
after that, you're gonna be so you can be a registered naturopath. Is that how it works, or a coach?
Naturopathic nutritional therapist. Yeah. So
Amazing, amazing.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to following you on your page and see how you're getting on. I'm looking forward
Thank
to
you.
putting this up, and yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a great conversation. And yeah, carry on with all the good work that you're doing with your podcast as well. Like, I've really been enjoying listening to it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Rachana.
Bye.
Bye.